the people at Fourth Church in general, all of them influenced me in one way or another. The congregation, the deacons I was so privileged to serve with during most of my time at Fourth. They have day jobs and they have these incredible ministries happening at the church. The elders, the same thing. I think I said at one point that joining the staff at Fourth was like playing for the Yankees. And that's, being from New York, what it has always felt like to me. And I think when you are in a profession, you hope to find a mentor, a great mentor. And at Fourth, I had so many, just people on the staff. But if I had to name one person who has influenced me professionally, personally, and spiritually, it would be John Buchanan. And it was never sort of a sit down didactic situation with John. He would know just when to kind of keep me in the fold, or just when to explain to me to take it easy, or just when I needed some reassurance. And for someone new to the ministry, that was so valuable. But John also is a person of such profound integrity. He's such a natural leader in the big moments, but also in the million little moments that make up life.
Yeah.
And just to be able to absorb him, to watch as he would decide what needed to be spoken at a meeting, or what needed to be preached on in a difficult week in our nation or in our world. And the words he would use, but then also just as much sometimes what he would decide not to give voice to or would not say out loud. I would just absorb all of that. All of us did on staff. He also taught me about intentionality. 3 of our Jebs and my children were born during our time in Chicago. We have 3 children, so they were all born there. And John being John and Sue, I have to mention Sue when I think about John. Taught me about family and priorities and work-life balance. And just, I'll never forget what it's like to be welcomed into their home when they were hosting a gathering. Just the feeling of being a part of their extended family. Even though I don't work with John in person on a regular basis anymore, and it's been years since I did, I still think of John every Sunday when I preach, and when I have to make decisions or decide how to lead. I just think about my experiences at Fourth and how he handled things with such grace and with such natural abilities. Being a part of the ministry of the deacons is something I cherish deeply. I also think about care teams and bridge teams, which I believe Carol Allen and Larry Nicholson brought to Fourth. And this idea, when somebody is recovering from surgery or just going through a challenging time, and would benefit from a intentional group friends from the church to surround that person to help you get over the tough time that you're in. And so we would go by zip code and we would create a small community for that person in need. And pretty much every time it was almost a miraculous kind of an experience where needs would be met, things would be tended to. It was such a grace-filled representation of the community of God at work. And since I left Fourth, have brought that to every church I've served, that care team model. And so I also think of that as a really effective way to be the church and community and meet the needs of people. And I'm just so grateful to have been a part of that and learn that model. I remember most distinctly, I began as a pastoral resident in September of 2001. And I believe it was our first official staff meeting day was September 11th, 2001. And I remember driving down from Evanston. Jeb and I had a little coach house apartment up there. He was in business school. And I drove down to the city and I heard the reports on the radio and parked the car, got into Blair Chapel at the time. I remember where Blair used to be. And we were at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning in Chicago. It was already 10 o'clock in New York. And I remember being so scared. We had just moved from New York and I had family in the city. But none of us knew how widespread this attack would be. And so I remember we met briefly, we prayed, and then we dispersed. Everyone remembers where they were on 9/11, and a lot of people may remember where they were when they watched live the Twin Towers go down. I was in the manse of Fourth Church, and there was a TV there in that dining area, and it was just beyond our ability to comprehend. And shortly thereafter, we gathered as a staff. And I remember distinctly John, and he was unwavering. And he invited anyone who needed to go home and tend to family if that was where they needed to be, but that we would remain open and would be a place of solace for people. And we set up a pastoral rotation in the sanctuary for anyone who may want, maybe seeking prayer and comfort on that day. And remember, we had no idea how widespread this attack was. And so when you think back at how bold and courageous that decision was, and his leadership, it mystifies me. And that I was just barely on staff that day and was able to watch a city church in one of the greatest cities in our country and in the world respond to a crisis. I'll never forget it. And then remember, it was 3 days later, that Friday, it was declared a National Day of Prayer. And it was, I think it was a noonday prayer all across the nation. And people just came streaming into Fourth Church. Ours was an interfaith service. And I remember so well the feeling of being a house of worship for all peoples on that day. And people walking in just distraught at the enormity of what had occurred and how the world had changed. And I remember praying those words from Desmond Tutu, that goodness is stronger than evil, that love is stronger than hate. And this day, that prayer service stays with me. That was a defining moment for my life, but also in the life of Fourth Church, yet another chapter of the way Fourth Church led in a time of national crisis. I carry with me so many wonderful memories from Fourth Church. I carry with me the sound of Dr. John Boyle's voice when he is offering a prayer in worship, or his dancing, sparkly eyes peering around my office door when you can tell he just had a great one-liner joke that he just has to tell, or when he'd remind me to, sure, give something my all, but try not to get too invested in the outcome. Dana Ferguson, and the way that she entrusted me with leading worship in the morning services, probably certainly before I was ready for it. She saw in me a capacity to handle funerals and memorial services well before I saw it in myself. I carry with me the nurturing of John and Betsy Cairns, and how much they poured into the pastoral residents. Were there at our beck and call, welcomed us like adopted children into their family. I also carry with me little vignettes like Easter sunrise service out on Oak Street Beach, and trudging out there in the cold morning, and standing on the sand and hearing the lake, and just celebrating the resurrection with communion bread, little grit and sand in there maybe, and the tower brass are out there. And then you look across the street and you've got Chicagoans noticing and opening their windows, and in some cases waving and saying Happy Easter. And then heading back to the church and seeing the line of people all around, wrapped around Chestnut Street, standing in the cold, often cold Easter mornings. And remember, we would distribute hot cider to people to tide them over till they could enter the church. And then those folks would sit in the church, but some would have to sit in overflow seating, we called it. And they still probably have that. And all to be a part of this amazing experience of the worshiping community at Fourth Church. And so I think of things like that and 1,000 others that just make me shake my head in disbelief that I was ever lucky enough to be a part of the Fourth Church family. I was thinking that perhaps there are 3 prophetic ideas that are deeply rooted in our Judeo-Christian heritage. And that, to me, when I think of Fourth Church and I think of its rich, courageous history over time, and I think of the near decade I spent there, and my own experiences there, and I think all the way to the present moment, these 3 prophetic themes sum up really what Fourth Church is all about. And that is do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with God. And that's Fourth Church.